Hello everybody, Gisele Grenier here. We're on take 2. I had finished recording the entire segment and I didn't check the microphone that's right here. The light wasn't on. So you got 20 minutes of video with no audio. So I have to refilm. Hence why the palette's already used up. Okay, let's try this again. So welcome to this segment. Today we're going to be working with burnt sienna and transparent red iron oxide. Now I have to remember what I covered. Burnt sienna is a red-orange brown, a red-orange neutral that is opaque. I'm using the Traditions lines for this one. It's opaque. The value is more on the low side and the intensity is right about in the middle. The fluid acrylics is made from the same pigment, except it's more transparent. It's semi-transparent, and we will see when we do our color chart exactly how transparent it is. Now, going to transparent red iron oxide, unfortunately, this is one of my favorite pigments. Unfortunately, Deco isn't making it anymore. So we will cover in another video lesson on how to DIY it. Awesome for mixed media, vintage mixed media, steampunk art, as well as glazing. It's a great glazing color for landscapes. Now this one though is PR 101, but it is very close to burnt sienna, which is why I love using it. And then I've got the Deco Traditions opaque titanium white and the Deco Media Fluid Acrylics titanium white. So that way we can do our values, consistency to consistency, like thick, heavy body to heavy body, thin body to thin body. But we are going to do an experiment on taking a heavy body paint and a like the Traditions with the fluid acrylics, mixing them to get different, see how the effect of a transparent paint with a heavier body paint, how that affects the values. And I think 5 minutes of the previous video was all blunders because I kept getting mistakes when I was trying to do the cross blending. All right, so we're going to start off with the burnt sienna in the Deco Traditions. It's a nice opaque pigment, but we are working on white paper with black lines. It will not be opaque. Okay, that doesn't work that way. Opaque is just it's not transparent. As with any acrylics, it's recommended an extra layer unless you're working with an impasto style. And impasto is a very thick application of paint. So I'm putting that on. And this isn't too bad, but the white of the paint is still the white of the paper is still showing through. So you let that dry, then you come back with another layer of paint. So I'm going to come now with the Traditions opaque titanium white and put that down here. There's a lot of observations we're going to be making with this. The reason why there's a lot of observations, burnt sienna is a core color in my limited palette. It's a color that must be in the limited palette because we use it for so much stuff. We use it for portrait colors. We use it for neutralizing colors. I'm going to paint over the black a little bit so you can see the opacity. Okay, a bit more white. What have you noticed about the tinting strength of burnt sienna? And if you don't understand the question, well, let's put it in a way. Compare it to, let's say, a phthalo blue. Is burnt sienna a strong, a medium, or a weak pigment when it comes to tinting strength? And depending on who makes your burnt sienna, it may lean more towards red or it may lean more towards orange. Mine, I had to put here because I didn't have enough room, but I drew a line that it leans more towards orange. So I put burnt sienna hyphen R hyphen RO, meaning burnt sienna leans more to the red-orange side. So right about there. And depending on the lighting that you use, if you were to look at this under really cool light, it may lean more towards red because it would add blue to it. Blue and red make purple. So it may look a bit more on the red side, but if you're looking at this under incandescent lighting or very warm light, it may look more orange because lighting is more orange. I'm trying to use balanced lighting. I've got one warm bulb, one cool bulb, warm bulb up on top, daylight bulb here, a cool white here, and then over here is a mix of both over there. Light there, light there, light there, and light up on top. So lighting makes a big difference. All right, I'm going to let that dry for a sec, and then we're going to apply another layer just so you can see, even with opaque paint, the benefits of adding another layer of color. All right, so let's put another layer. Just had to let it sit for a minute. There we go, look at that. So even though something says that it's opaque, even just going over the black lines, because the paper is so white, that actually comes through the paint. All right, so now let's move over to the burnt sienna in the Deco Art Media Fluid Acrylics. So it's a lot more fluid, so you'll be able to see the difference with the opacity. Now this one here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the value scale, which will give this time to dry, and then I'll come back and add another layer, but only on part of it, so you'll see the transparency. This comes in really handy when you're looking at doing, I need to do it this way, when you're looking at doing glazing, vintage steampunk, all that stuff. Here we go. Now pick up a bit more white. Now, what do you think of the tinting strength when you're comparing the fluid acrylics to the traditions? I think it's snowing again. It's so cold outside. The tinting strength on the fluid acrylics, I personally find they're a little bit, not so much weaker. The pigment is the same. It's not as weak because it's a fluid acrylic, so it's not as heavy body. I don't think, and I'm pretty sure I picked up the same amount of white. You would have to do it with measuring spoons for that type of experiment. Okay, so now I'm going to come over here. That's not too bad. If it's still tacky, or the paint's tacky, if you put another layer, you may lift it up. So that's that one. So I'm going to keep going. Then if I remember, remind me to come back and put another layer right over here. Oh, I haven't been asking pop quiz. Well, I've been asking questions, but not putting pop quiz in front. So pop quiz. What's your first instinct on the type of paintings you can do? What subject or what element of a subject could you paint with these mixtures? So Deco Art Traditions Transparent Red Iron Oxide. Oh, I love this. I'm so sad that they stopped making it. I'm hoping, because anytime I do a video with transparent red iron oxide, because it's the paint I have, and now I'm down to my last bottles, I hope that somehow Deco Art gets wind of how sad I am that they stopped making it, and maybe they'll start making it to make me happy. Talk about vanity. Look at that. Now, compare to burnt sienna. You can obviously see, lift that up, shine that right to the light. You can obviously see where that leans on the color wheel. Now, I'm not going to tell you. I want you to tell me. So pop quiz number 2. Where does transparent red iron oxide sit on the color wheel? Now let's add some white to that. If you didn't know now or then, when I asked that, now you'll know. So just by adding some white, it just brings this color to a whole new level. Now this is where I'm getting confused. I have to make sure I pick up the right white. What color do you see? What underlying color do you see? What's a subject, not so much with this one here, but what's a subject you think could use these values? The opacity is nice too. Even though transparent red iron oxide is, well, transparent. So now I'm going to work with the fluid acrylics. This is where I got to be careful. Now I'm going to work with the Deco Media Fluid Acrylics Transparent Red Iron Oxide. Make sure I go to the right one. Isn't that beautiful? Oh, now I have to make sure. Nope, I did that wrong. Or did I? No, I didn't. Yes, I did. I did that wrong. Oh, see? I picked up the wrong one. Okay, well, I'm going to let that dry. It should have been this one that I picked up. It should have been this one. There we go. I was waiting. It looks the same. There we go. That's what it should look like. It's very fluid. Okay, so let's just put another layer right there. When you've got this on your palette, the transparent red iron oxides and the transparent yellow iron oxide, you know how when you're on your palette you spray it with water to mist it up? Be careful how much misting you put on there because you're going to really make this paint really fluid. So 2 layers of paint, 1 layer of paint. The color-wise, intensity-wise, they're relatively the same. The only difference is the Decor Traditions is more of a heavier body, where the Fluid Acrylics is a fluid body. Gisele, pick up the right one. Okay, so fluid, fluid. And add the white. This is where I'm going to get all screwed up. That's where I'm going to get all messed up. There we go. So let's do some, some observations here. So think of some colors that you can paint that, with this versus this. Think about the tinting strength now of transparent red iron oxide compared to burnt sienna. Think of, because it's so transparent and you can use it as glazing, glazing over another means transparent paint over another color and you get optical color mixing. Do you have some ideas of what you could use with that? What would happen if you took transparent red iron oxide and put it over something that was yellow? What would happen if you took the Decor tradition, or sorry, what would happen if you took transparent red iron oxide, doesn't matter which one, but transparent red iron oxide, PR101, if you put that over something that was yellow? Then what do you think would happen if you took burnt sienna, PBR7, and put that over something that's yellow? That's another thing. Okay, depending on the manufacturer, you may find some burnt siennas as PR101. That's not burnt sienna. Burnt sienna is PBR7. Okay, so be very careful when you're buying your paints. If you're not using the Traditions or the fluid acrylics, make sure that your burnt sienna is PBR7, not PR101. PR101 is a red, pigment red. Okie dokie. So this experiment, what I want to do now, what we did is we took the burnt sienna for the Traditions and mixed it with titanium white for Traditions. We took the burnt sienna with fluid acrylics and mixed it with the titanium white of the fluid acrylics. What I want to do now is I want to take the fluid acrylics burnt sienna and mix it with the Traditions titanium white, the Traditions burnt sienna, the fluid acrylics titanium white, the transparent red iron oxides in the fluid acrylics with the titanium white for the Traditions, and Traditions transparent red iron oxide with the fluid acrylics titanium white. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these the way they are, and what I've been doing is mixing these together and then these together, because this is the fluid acrylics and traditions. Now I'm going to take this and this. This and this, this and this, this and this. The experiment is, will taking a fluid acrylic with a heavier body, will that change the way the value scale is done? That's the experiment. All right. So, Deco Art Media Fluid Acrylics Burnt Sienna. I'm not even going to bother putting well, no, let's keep it consistent. Let's put the original color here. And we have to remember when we come back to the fluid acrylics, I could do it right now. Right there, put a third one. This is dry. So you'll see what it looks like with 3 layers. All right, so Deco Art Media Fluid Acrylics in the, okay, so now we have to take, sorry for repeating myself, I just want to make sure I don't screw it up. Now I'm going to take the Deco Art Traditions Titanium White to create the value scale. What do you think would happen? You're taking a burnt sienna in fluid acrylics and the heavier body titanium white. So what we're really doing is we should be comparing these two right here. Because this is the fluid acrylics burnt sienna. This is with the, this one here is with the fluid acrylics titanium white. This is with the traditions titanium white. You know what? If I can pull this off, I'm going to open a bottle of champagne. Cross-mixing paints confuses me. It confuses me. I'm loving the opacity. I'm finding the opacity on this stronger. And I'm finding that the titanium white as well is shortening the value string, meaning the burnt sienna seems to be weaker. It's not so much weaker, it's because it's a fluid acrylic. Because the titanium white in the traditions is a heavier body, it by nature is much stronger than the burnt sienna, which is the fluid acrylics. So now let's reverse that now. Let's take the traditions burnt sienna with the fluid acrylics titanium white. So traditions burnt sienna, which is thickening up a little bit now because it's been on the palette for a little bit. Now we're going to mix it with the fluid acrylics titanium white. And I want you to observe what's happening. I picked up a big chunk of white there, larger than I normally would. Even picking up a big chunk of white, it's still a nice mix. There we go. I have to pick up a bit more. So what are your observations? That's your pop quiz. What are your observations when we're comparing the burnt sienna and fluid acrylics, the burnt sienna in a heavier body, mixing it with the opposite line? So fluid acrylic with a heavier body paint, then the heavier body paint with a more fluid paint. What are your observations? Comparing traditions burnt sienna, so we're comparing this here. Compare. The fluid acrylics burnt sienna, we're comparing these two. So what are your observations? And when you're commenting below, make sure you repeat the question and then write your answer, just so I know what you're answering. So now we're going to take the Deco Art Media Fluid Acrylics, which is this one here. Oh, I need more white. We're going to take the Deco Art Media Fluid Acrylics. I love this color. Oh. And mix it with the Deco Art Traditions Titanium White. Also, we should do an experiment. What would happen if you took this, if you wanted to try to neutralize it? Think of what color you could add to this to neutralize it. Because it's pretty intense, right? What happens if you want to paint something, you want to glaze it to for a vintage effect, but you don't want it to be so bright. Let's say you want to glaze something in the background or paint something in the background. What could you use to neutralize that but still keep the transparency? That's going to be a heavy duty question for you. So that's another pop quiz question. The whole thing when you're painting and doing mixes is that you have to ask questions, because that's the only way you're going to learn is by asking questions. And by doing these types of experiments next to another color on the color wheel, I can so see the difference between these two. And I can really see now where they lean on the color wheel. You can see, really see easily now. Burnt Sienna definitely leans more towards red, orange, where transparent red iron oxide leans more towards red, orange, but not, when I say red, orange, it's red, orange is more closer to red, but not red. And just red, orange is just right in here. So I'm going in between the two. I don't know if that makes any sense. Red, orange, more towards red. It's not a red orange, but it's more towards the red, but it is a bit orange. And this is just red orange, so it leans right in here. So there's red orange, and there's red orange, right about here. Not quite orange, not quite red. This is the most confusing lesson I've ever done, is trying to explain these two. Okay, Deco Art Traditions. Did I pick up the right paint with that one? Yeah, Deco Art Traditions, transparent red iron oxide. Oh my God. Heavier, a little bit heavier in consistency. Still transparent. This is one of those pigments that adding white is nice to see the true underlying color, but the beauty of this paint is it as a whole. Now I'm going to mix it with the Deco Art Media Fluid Acrylics. So, and what are your observations now? Right one. Beautiful color. What do you think of the tinting strength? What do you think of the intensity? How do you think the white, by using a fluid white versus a heavy body white? So there's those observations. Now, what if we want to take, I'll just use the Traditions. Taking burnt sienna and then adding transparent red iron oxide. What do we get? Let's say we want to heighten the intensity of the transparent, heighten the intensity of burnt sienna, but we want the opacity of, let's try this again. Burnt sienna and transparent red iron oxide. I want to get the intensity, want to get more intensity to burnt sienna, by using transparent red iron oxide, and then I also want to have a bit more of the opacity in transparent red iron oxide pulling from burnt sienna. Oh my God, I should just quit while I'm ahead. I'm taking properties of both. Opaque paint will always trump transparent paint. Yeah, that's right. I'm looking, trying to compare. So to me, the transparent red iron oxide, the intensity is trumping the burnt sienna, but I'm pulling a bit of the opacity from burnt sienna. So it's not as transparent as here, but it is, I am getting the intensity. So by mixing burnt sienna and transparent red iron oxide, the biggest benefit is the intensity, and it goes to a semi-transparent. So I like that. I like that. Okay, when we add the white, it'll change the values. We'll be able to see the true underlying color. Oh. Okay, let's go over, over the black. Yep, semi-transparent. Let's add a bit more white. So comparing to the other charts, I'm definitely seeing that this is more of the transparent red iron oxide. So what if we add a little bit more burnt sienna? I'm going to add it right in here. Right in there. There we go. Not as intense. I'm pulling the brown from the burnt sienna. Well, let's make a note. Plus burnt sienna. And I'm using Deco Art Traditions. All right. Okay. I am so sorry for this being so confusing, but you can see how it's, maybe I should have had two different palettes. So you can see that the burnt sienna is more on the red orange side, but it's kind of like right in the middle. But the transparent red iron oxide definitely goes more towards the red side. Like look at the intensity. It is really the orange side, I should say, the orange side. Burnt sienna is more on the red side. Transparent red iron oxide looks a bit more on the orange side. In its true form, it's really intense, but when you're adding the white, it makes a real big change onto what the paint looks like. The other pop quiz question was, what are some of the subjects that you can use to paint this, even if it as a base? What would happen if you took transparent red iron oxide and applied a layer of that over something that was yellow? What would happen if you took burnt sienna and did that same experiment? So, although Traditions isn't making transparent red iron oxide, there are lots of manufacturers that are making it. You want to make sure you look for PR 101. But in an upcoming lesson, we are going to see if we can make transparent red iron oxide as a DIY project. So, comment below with the answers to the pop quiz questions. As a reminder, type out the question and then type out your answer so I know what you're answering. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you need to go to the description below, click on a link to the community, and post your pictures and any questions regarding your color charts over there, because you can't post pictures in YouTube. Alrighty, so I'm done. I'm going to clean up. I'm going to have a cup of tea and try to be able to do the next video lesson within a reasonable time frame without screwing up. Maybe just today wasn't meant to happen. So until I see you in that lesson, stay inspired.